Hey everyone, it's Lyndon and Allie. You're watching Tiger Takes, the best way in the world to start your Friday or take a break during your Friday because it's lunchtime. Ow Pow, how's it going over there in the ATL?
The ATL is kicking. So far, the weather hasn't been too bad from Elsa, so hopefully it'll be a fun little weekend here. Still recovering from July 4th. We had a good old time at Lake Martin, but I brought out my spring power summer gear to get ready for what our discussion is. Talking about the top 5 offensive Auburn players we're so excited to watch this year. But before anything else, Lynn, I've got to give a shout out to my hockey team. Back to back, Tampa Bay Lightning. I think I've gotten Auburn Twitter on the hockey train just because I tweet about it so much. But we did it, and it was worth it. Were you able to watch any?
Yes. And I put in my sports cast that night. You know, it's so funny
My
because
girl.
when we were at Auburn, you were like, first off, I never watched a hockey game until I moved to Tampa. But when we were at Auburn together, you would have your hockey jersey and you would go watch these hockey games. And there would be a few people that were hockey fans that we knew that would go with you. But I remember thinking, like, who
Who's that
watches
weird girl?
hockey? Like what? And I remember watching when they were in 2015 when they were in the finals against Chicago with like my little Fox Sports crew. And they were so into it. And I was like, I'm doing it. Like I'm watching hockey and now I love the Lightning. I love that organization. They do so much in the community too. And I'm just
And we're
super
back to back
proud.
Tampa Bay. I mean, you've got
Tampa
the
Bay,
Bucks, the Rays, the Lightning, and some we talked about that, some Auburn players who are now Super Bowl champs in the Bucks. So Tampa is a good
literally
pipeline.
Crazy.
Well, when I went to Auburn, I didn't realize how many kids from Tampa went to Auburn. And so the Auburn alumni group is pretty huge down there for Auburn. But I think the craziest thing, I think how we're going to kick off this Friday Tiger Takes is talking about our craziest stories of where we've gotten a War Eagle in, our lives. And this one is not the craziest, but on the game on Monday night, I was at a random Atlanta bar, just minding my own business in my Lightning gear with some friends. And this girl comes up and she's like, hey, like go Lightning, go Lightning. I'm like, oh my God, it's so crazy. We're in Atlanta meeting, a girl from Florida and another gear. And she's like, oh, where'd you go? And I went, oh, Auburn. I know it's kind of weird coming from Florida. And she goes, I went to Auburn. And I was like, there's no way that this girl in a Lightning gear. And she was like, War Eagle. And we were like, holy smoke. She was a couple years older than me, but it's just a small world that like Auburn is. So that's like one of the crazier stories that I'm just in a random Atlanta bar watching a hockey game of all things. And a fellow girl from Auburn and Tampa like was there watching it with me. So do you have a crazy War Eagle story?
I do. Did you get her number though? Are y'all gonna be besties?
I think so. Yeah, we like got her number. She was like, anytime you want to watch a game, she goes back for a ton. I told her about our show, so maybe she's watching. So shout out Holly if you're watching on this episode. But it was pretty crazy out of all places to get that. But what about yours?
I think my craziest War Eagle story, let's go back to when I was in kindergarten at Disney World in Animal Kingdom, riding in the double stroller with my brother Michael. It's a monsoon. Like, I mean, it could have been a hurricane for all I knew. Like, it was raining so hard, so everyone's
That's
running out
crazy.
of the park. And my dad yells War Eagle to none other than the newly hired Auburn football coach, Tommy Tuberville. And
what a small world.
And we talked, and I'll never forget sitting in the stroller in the rainstorm. We talked to him for a while. And I think
that's
it
crazy.
was different back in the day because they were super famous, but it's nowhere near the social media, the level of fame that coaches are on now. And I'll never forget that. And my dad will never forget that. And it was all from a War Eagle. And he said, War Eagle back. And, that was mine.
Wow. That's a good one. Well, I know Scott Blake would have. I was going to say, it's a good pipeline for Auburn, but I will say, Scott Blake, if you're watching, which you should be this week, Mr. Blake, you would have gotten a photo for your Facebook with Tommy back in the day, if that was around back in the day, for sure.
Y'all, real quick, Allie was with my dad last weekend on the lake, and my dad, we'll be sitting on the boat, and I'll turn around, and this is going to embarrass him, and he's like snapping a selfie. Like he's getting that new Facebook profile pic for sure. So shout out
with his little Auburn hat on. So I'm okay with that. Well, let's jump in. I know people want to talk. Make sure you're commenting and watching and sharing it. So like I said, we're going to talk about We're going to split it up in segments, talk about our 5 offensive guys we're looking forward to watching this fall. We're only 8 weeks away from the season, which is insane. We got a comment from Jim Sarrett, all of them, but especially interested in seeing if Bo Nix takes a leap forward or if he's already peaked and needs to be replaced. Bo is on our list, so we will definitely hit that. But thanks, Jim, for chiming in. I can't believe it's only 8 weeks until the season opener against Akron, which is absolutely nuts. Can you believe it?
No, because we're already on week 6 of Tiger Take. So basically, in the time we've done this show, we'll be getting ready for kickoff. So time flies, but hey, I'm ready to get this train rolling.
Let's go. Why don't you kick us off? You kick us off with your number 4. Who is your top 4 pick that you're excited to watch this year?
I'm excited to see Elijah Canyon, and I was actually reading some articles on him, and I think a lot of people are curious about the wide receiver position because we did lose Anthony, Eli, Seth, and he's going to get his chance to start. He's from the same high school. Gosh, is this episode sponsored by Florida? Because he's a Florida guy. He's from the same high school as Sean Shivers, and he had a good A-Day. And I'm really excited to see how we can kind of take the wide receiver core to the next level. And spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the big guy that we think can take it to the next level. But, I think this is someone who is going to have a breakout season. And we like to kind of, I know you look at Alabama as wide receiver but at Auburn, I think, we really latch on fan-wise to our wide receivers. Seth Williams was a fan favorite, as was Anthony Schwartz. So I'm excited to see Elijah and see what he can do. And I was in Florida on A-Day, but I did watch his highlights, and it was exciting.
Yeah, no, I think that's a position, like you said, my top pick, we'll talk about him later, about the big fish that we just landed, but it's a position that's open. And it's a position that I think that they're going to need, to solidify very early in the season if, Bo Nix has a chance to have a shot at a good junior season. My 4th is a collective group. It's the ever infamous Auburn offensive line that has been the talk of the town for the last couple seasons. I was reading up on the guys. It's the first time that they've returned all their starters in, I think it was 4 or 5 years, which is absolutely insane. And it's also their 3rd coach in 4 years, I think it is, or 4th coach in third. I think it's 3rd coach in 4 years at the offensive line. Will Friend came in with Brian Harston's staff, and that's insane. And I understand it comes from recruiting, and maybe there's been a lack of getting some top guys to land and stick at Auburn, but it's hard to recruit when you're changing out coaches every other season. A guy, especially an offensive line, that's a family. Those guys eat, breathe, live, sleep together. And when you don't have a guy there, consistently, it's hard. But last year, they gave up, I think it was 21 sacks on Bo, which left him absolutely just running for his sweet, dear little life. And that's just not going to be acceptable in the SEC play this year. I mean, I think Harston knows it. The Auburn fan base certainly knows it. But I think the one thing that I'm excited to watch is a lot of these guys are seniors and juniors. I mean, you got Broderius Ham, you've got Nick Brahms at center. And from what I've read, a lot of this staff has been nutrition and getting kids ready for the season and not taking summer workouts lightly. And at the offensive line, that's important. You have to have the weight, you have to have the muscle, you have to have the strength to last an entire SEC season without injuries, and you have to have depth. And I don't think Auburn has that yet. I think there's some guys on the transfer portal. There's a guy that just came from LSU that I think people could have their eye on, but I think it's going to be interesting to watch, and they need it. They desperately need it. And I think a lot of these guys are on social media, and, they see the Auburn fan base kind of ragging on them. And I think it's a chip on their shoulder. And I think Will Friend has definitely gotten the guys in a positive attitude from coming off a rough year. And I think another important thing is the team never really gave up on them. They never really pointed fingers at the offensive line. Bo Nix always had great things to say about them game in and game out, whether, they performed well or not. And I think that's important too, to know that your leader and captain still has your back. But I think bringing in, all of these starters is going to be crucial. And I think you have some transfers, you have Brandon Council. And I think Carson said, it's going to take us a while. We're not going to announce, starting 5 until closer to the season, because he really is. Every position's open on this Harsin staff, which I think is important. But I think that's a collective group that I think all Auburn fans are going to have their eyes on this fall. What do you think?
Well, that's a good point. And, in Harson's infamous Christmas Eve press conference, he said, like, I want to win every single day, no matter what we're doing.
Yep.
And he did emphasize workouts so much, getting the strength up, getting the stamina. And like you mentioned, the offensive line, they've taken a lot of flack over the last couple of years. But, I didn't even think about that. But when I replay, post game press conferences in my head, he never blames anyone else, and they are really close, and you do have a lot of vets, and I think everything you said, Allie, was just spot on. A lot of good points. I'm excited to see them, and I know if we can just get them together, I think it'll be just a ripple effect. It does start in the trenches. People, it's not just a cliche. You
No,
cannot do
it's not.
anything if you don't have time. So I'm excited about them too, and hopefully we're not saying the phrase this year, well, if we
Ugh.
only had a line.
Yep. I would love not to be able to tweet that this year. That's my goal is to, and Auburn's had like a really good legacy for a long time with offensive line. I mean, there's a lot of, guys that went to the league from the line, and it's been a long time since that's been the case. And guys haven't panned out. They haven't landed. They've landed 5 stars. They've landed top guys, just either the development or it just wasn't a right fit or the transition of so many coaches and so many different offensive schemes. But I always forget, I mean, it's a whole new staff. I mean, it's Mike Bobo, it's new offensive line, it's new wide receiver, it's new everybody. So it is a total unknown. But I think our number 3s are also the same. Lynn, why don't you kick us off on who, coming off the offensive line, is probably the most important player?
Bo Nix, guys. We're so excited. Hey, Kat.
Hey, Kat. Long time no see.
Offensive guys we're looking forward to. Obviously him. He's been a discussion for so long. He has TJ Finley breathing down his neck. What is he going to do? He hasn't panned out to be the best the last 2 years. Gus Malzahn always said, he's won a national championship, talked with Big Up. What are we going to see from Bo? This is a new staff. I respect him for, taking blame, wanting to be better, and taking it head on. I think Bo's an extremely mature person. So I'm excited to see what Harsin is going to be able to do with him. And if in his junior year, this is his 3rd season. And I can't remember the last time Auburn had a quarterback for 3 straight seasons. I mean, I know it was a big deal even getting a quarterback for 2 seasons back to back for that little period there. So what can he do? And I'm excited to see. And I think, with the competition, I think the quarterback competition room is going to, the cream's going to rise to the top. Is that?
I think that's the say. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right, but I agree. I mean, it's do or die for, Bo, and he's had the chances. You can blame it on, the line. You can blame it on the lack of wide receiver play. I mean, there's a lot of drop balls the last couple seasons that should not have been drop balls, but there were a lot of overthrown passes too that could have been easy, game winners. So, when he started that game in Oregon, we were both there. That was one of our highlights of the last decade games. I really thought the kid had it in him. I mean, he's a coach's kid, and I think you can tell that. And I think that almost is a hindrance to him because he thinks so much and he, is analyzing every single play instead of letting like natural instinct kind of take over in games. And I think almost Gus and him were very similar in that way. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see a guy like Carson who, does produce high volume quarterbacks, did a lot of good things at Boise State. Mike Bobo obviously is a natural at doing that as well, but I don't think they're as analytical as Gus was. And I think that can help Bo, realize that like his natural instinct at quarterback is what he needs to go off of. You can't always break down a play if your line's breaking down too. There's just not time. And I think someone said, has he peaked? I don't know. I also don't think he's had competition behind him to really push him. I think when he came in, he was, the all air of Auburn quarterback, and there was no guy to push him to be better in practice. And I think Bo is incredibly mature, like you said. I mean, the pressure that he came in with, knowing he was Patrick Nick's son and knowing Auburn needed a big name quarterback, that's a lot of pressure. It really, really is. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, especially at a place like Auburn when you already have, such legacy coming from behind you. But he's handled it really well. He's never cracked. He's had bad games, but he always rode it in stride and still, wanted to continue to be the best. I mean, he's always, the first one in, first one out from what we hear. And it sounds like a lot of the players really respect him. But I think a little competition can't hurt. I mean, you're only as good as the person on the bench, is what the saying is. And I think if TJ Finley is what everyone is expecting him to be, then Bo better, step up. And I think he can. I don't think it's a lack of talent. I really don't. I think last year was a dumpster fire across a lot of positions at Auburn. So I don't think you can really take COVID season, as we dub it, into consideration at that. But it really is do or die. And I don't think Harsin will wait long if he doesn't feel like it's a good fit, if that makes sense.
No, I think
I
so
don't
too.
think, yeah.
Because it was
So we
no
have another,
secret.
yeah.
Oh, I was going to say it was no secret that, I mean, I remember last year in press conferences, and when Gus was asked about something completely not even related to Bo, I mean, we could be talking about a specific play and they would all go back to Bo's our quarterback. Bo's a great quarterback. Like, he was fully engulfed in that. And I noticed that seriously last season because you could tell Gus feeling the pressure and everything was kind of coming to a head. But I think, like you said, Harsin's brand new. I'm sure Harsin loves the guy, but what loyalty does he have to Bo? Really none.
Yep.
So, but I think Harsin's personality, hardcore worker, but not as analytical, like you said, as Gus. Bo needs to have fun, and I think he will.
Yep, I agree. And we have a comment from Casey. Auburn O-line will be really improved this year. Our O-line will be a top 5 O-line this season. I saw how much they improved in the spring game. Look, I will take a top 5 O-line all day, all night, if that means it can give, Bo time to make a play. And if he doesn't make a play when his line's stepping up, then we know, it may have been peaked for it. But that's a good comment. I'm glad people agree that that's a line to watch. And I think our number 2 are also the same. So why don't we kickstart it on who is our second offensive watch player?
Hank. Let's go. You already tweeted out you think he'll score on the first play.
I do. I think it's going to be the first. He's going to be the first guy to score in an Auburn uniform this year. I think he's going to take it to the house. I think it's going to be 80 yards to the house. I think it's going to be huge against Akron. I think the tank is coming in and he has a big chip on his shoulder. I think, again, the last year, there was a lot of hype around him, some injuries, some, questionable games, some questionable calls, some uncertainty on switching out, or, running backs. But I think Harsin is not afraid to run a guy if he's hot. And I think if you get Tank hot, there's very, very, very few players that are as quick, as nimble, make good cuts and good decisions as quick as he does in the entire, SEC, let alone the country. So again, it comes back from our trenches, but if they give him, the slot, he's going and he's gone. And I think he's just a fun player. I mean, as a running back called Tank, like, you can't make that stuff up for marketing. But why is he your number 2?
What do you recruit people that have good names? You know what I mean?
Great names.
We're gonna have the guys with the easy names that catch on and live forever.
Yep, I agree. Well, okay, so your number 1 is another running back, but what do you think? Why do you think Tank is going to be so important this year? I mean, what do you think? Has him standing out. Do you think he's going to be 1,000-yard, back? Another one to add for Auburn?
I do, but I think also I feel like in the past couple of years, I think back to even Kerryon Johnson and how we literally ran him into the ground. Like, he had to do it all alone. I think what we saw in A-Day, the spring game, was Sean and Tank, sharing the duties, having a lot of carries, and we're not even number 1 yet. But I think, like you said, Harsin's not going to be afraid to use Tank a lot. And I think he could have a 1,000-yard rushing season, and that's fine. I mean, I want to use Tank the best, but I also think with my number 1 that we'll talk about in a little bit, that's personal reasons I'm also excited to see him play. But no, Tank's going to be the number 1 guy, but I really think having that extra help with Sean will be really good for Auburn to truly depend on 2 guys to get the job done.
Yep. And I was just Googling because I had to make sure that I'd read this right. Harsin had 6 out of his 11 seasons at Boise State, had 6 seasons with a 1,000-yard back. So very similar, he gets how important the ground game is. I think, Boise State might be a little different of a league in the SEC going against some of these defensive guys as running back. But I mean, that's important. He understands the importance of that position, which I think got a little lost in this past year. But why don't we kick off our number one guys in Auburn uniforms this fall? Who we're most excited to watch? Of course, all of them. But who are we most excited to watch this fall in Jordan-Hare?
Okay, I'll keep mine quick because Allie has the big guy. So I'm so excited to watch Sean Shivers. I covered him in high school. Like I said, this is personal reasons. I love his personality on and off the field. I'm so happy he had his Iron Bowl moment, knocking the helmet off. I think it was Xavier McKinney, Alabama. So I just think he's a personality. He's a great guy for Auburn. There's a reason why he got the podcast deal a couple weeks ago with the NIL, and it just makes me happy. And I hope he has the most success this year, being one of the leaders on the field. And yeah, I'm just excited to watch him.
I think he has a leader personality, and he's like you, so tiny but mighty. You guys have that in common. But I think he has like a really understated leader kind of quality to him. Like when he kind of talks, people listen. It's in a locker room. And that might be because he's, been told his whole life that he's too small and has to overcome so much. And a lot of guys, you need that in a locker room. You need someone who understands the struggle and can take a loss and make sure it doesn't bleed into like the locker room. You know what I mean?
And even when he wasn't getting a lot of carries, wasn't one, like an upperclassman, I feel like he still had that leadership quality for Auburn.
Which I think pays off.
Because he brings joy. That's why. So
are you saying you're going to be wearing a Shivers jersey in the stadium this fall?
Yes, he can take all my money. Take it.
Take it. There's the card. Well, my number one guy, very new, less than 24 hours, a huge get, whether UGA fans on Twitter want Auburn to believe it, is former 5-star, former number one wide receiver, former UGA Bulldog, Demetrius Robinson, announced yesterday that he will be joining the Tigers this fall at a position that we mentioned earlier is wide open. I mean, if you want playing time, this is where you want to go, and it gives Bo Nix a weapon. It gives him height. It gives him ups. It gives him quickness. He has the hands. And Auburn does really well with UGA transfers. So that's just, another side point that people tend to do really well when they cross the state line over to Auburn. But, I mean, it was huge. I think it proves that Harsin can recruit in the South. A lot of people were like, he's from Boise. Who cares? I think people really respect him already. I think he's building it from the ground up the way he wants to, which I think is very rare in the SEC. Usually a new coach has to follow in line with what's already been built. And it sounds like he's really taking his own approach when it comes to really emphasizing on strength, really emphasizing on nutrition, really getting guys to bond outside of the locker room. And I think that's a big win that this says. And it gives some stability in a position that is very uncertain when it came to this fall. Like you said, Auburn lost a lot of top dogs, a lot of big guys, new wide receiver coach, not very, many upperclassmen. And I think he's going to have 2 years of eligibility, I think is what I read, or maybe 1.
I think it's 1.
Yeah, I think it's 1. So he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder, trying to go as an NFL draft prospect. And guys like that very much, I mean, you hate to bring him up, but Duke Williams, before, things didn't quite work out at Auburn, I mean, he was coming in to become an NFL prospect. And I think that kind of chip on your shoulder and that kind of energy bleeds in, especially at a cocky position, like people say at wide receiver. I mean, they usually say the cockiest guys are wide receivers because they have to, because you got to be confident when you go up for that ball, against a cornerback. So I think it brings Bo Nix an option. And, people say, well, he only had, 12 catches last year, less than 100 yards. Sure. That's great.
Georgia
but
was loaded. That's why he left.
Exactly.
He is talented. Like you said, he was a 5-star. This makes so much sense for him. He wasn't getting the targets at Georgia. Come over to a new program. The energy is going to be fresh regardless. You're not going to have anything weighing you down. Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, but say what you want, Bo is experienced. So he knows he's at least going to get an experienced quarterback who has been in these situations, played in these big games.
Yep.
And that's what I think is most exciting to me with this new addition here is because, like you said, he's going to be hungry but it just makes sense. And one of my friends, Dane Young, writes for Georgia, and he was like, I know Georgia fans are like, what, but it makes so much sense for Robertson to come over to Auburn, close by, quick little trip. The fam can still come, experienced quarterback,
Yep.
new coach, bringing in that fresh energy. Let's go. When's kickoff?
Yeah, I mean, he has 12 games to make a check for the next year, and that's not to be understated. I mean, he doesn't have time. So it's either, again, a lot of guys are do or die on our list. So this is kind of the year where you're either gonna make or break the bank. But yeah, there's been some fun little UGA tweets like, "Oh, we love leftovers." I mean, I will take a Nick Marshall leftover all day, any day, if he means what we've got out of Nick Marshall.
Give
So
me
I'm
the Nick
expecting
Marshall
very.
leftover. Give me the Trey Matthews leftover. Like,
Give
I
it to
can't
me.
wait for this guy to be on, recruiting visits this year and be standing in the field. At least back in the day, we would show the Georgia highlights,
Yep.
and everyone's just staring at him like, dude, that used to be you. So
yeah,
I'm
well,
excited.
I think I saw some former Auburn players like Markel Harrell was like, I tried to get you to Auburn back in the day. I mean, he's only a 2016 commit, which is a wild because that was my last year covering kids. So that's a long time ago. But I mean, he was recruited by Auburn. It's not like he doesn't know the program and doesn't know what it is. So I'm super pumped. I mean, everyone loves a good wide receiver. I'm glad Allie is co-owner of the Tank for Heisman campaign. Graham, me and you we're out there. I'm on it. I did say Bo Nix was going to win one. I'm off that train. I'm back on the Tank train.
She hopped off.
So I'm hopping off, but I'm not jumping ship. I'm just switching. I'm just switching to a tank. We're getting a lot of War Eagles from guys. Thanks for joining in today. We have our final segment, our Tiger Toast for the weekend. But before we do that, who do you think? I mean, I know who I said was going to get the first score for Auburn. Who do you think is going to get the first touchdown for Auburn this season?
Why don't we just do it big and say Robertson? Why not? Why not?
Ooh, I like it.
Go deep
just
down
a bomb.
The field. Let's give Bo a little bit of spotlight there. Show off his arm. Get the new guy, the 5-star, in the end zone. Hello, we back.
Ooh, man, I would love the arm with the when they hold it up in there like a touchdown sign and getting that coder and just tagging UGA in it
and have the
saying thanks.
Offensive lineman just go lift him up in the dirty dancing pose. Yes.
I love it. I love
make
it.
My heart sing.
Well, like I said, we are 8 weeks away. But for this Tiger Toast, I am going to cheers UGA leftovers. A lot of people say kids only go to Auburn because they couldn't get into UGA. And you know what? That's fine by me because I will go to hell and high water war with a UGA fan. Living in Atlanta, I got to do it big. So I'm cheersing to all my UGA leftovers that are repping the AU, repping the orange and blue. Welcome, Demetrius Robinson. It's a great club. I hear all about it. So I'm toasting. I think I tried the Bud Light seltzers last weekend. Phenomenal. So I think I'm going to jump on that train and continue that. And cheers to all of my UGA leftovers because we're a strong and mighty crowd. So Lynn, what about you? What are you toasting to this weekend?
I'll toast this little Starbucks drink for starters. And it's really good. Cold foam, cold brew with 3 pumps of sugar-free vanilla, splash of cream, and a pump of caramel in the cold foam. It's awesome. And I'm going to toast this. Let me think. What do I want to toast to? Oh, I have a good one. I'm going to toast to new kicker Alex McPherson. I got to
another great commitment
this week on the day he announced, and it was so exciting to know where he was going and just waiting for him to send out that tweet. He's a great kid, and obviously Kicker U. We should put that on a t-shirt as well. I'll take it. Take it. I love it, and he's so precious. And he said he liked Auburn because the coaches, community, and churches. And that sounds like an Auburn guy to me. So cheers to you.
That
Alex.
is an Auburn man through and through.
Down there.
Well, I mean, like you said, Kicker U, look, games are lost on bad kicks. We know that better than anyone. So we're excited to have a new guy to continue. It's going to be weird not having, a brother out there. It's a totally new name. So there's a new legacy that will be happening. Next week, guys, we're going to break down our top 5 defensive guys, on the fun ball with Derek Mason coming in. Keep forgetting he's the Auburn defensive coordinator until I see his name. But thanks again for joining us.
You is what also we are. So.
I mean, that I'll take it. That just brings some experience for Harsin. But thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the War Eagles. Thanks for all the comments, Lynn. I hope you have a great weekend. You're going to be watching some soccer, it sounds like, over there in the Ham.
Yes, Birmingham Legion. So if y'all are in Birmingham to get your other football fix, come on out to BBVA Field.
Awesome. You'll see us. But thanks again for joining us for this week's Tiger Take. Enjoying your lunch break, your break from work, your early weekend start with us here at Tiger Takes. And we will see you guys next weekend.